On the night she should have been claimed as his mate, a night she waited for her whole life, he cast her out. The storm was waiting over Bloodpine Ridge. Black clouds pressed low, swollen with thunder, the wind carrying the smell of iron and pine sap. Torches hissed in the gusts, their flames straining but unbroken, throwing restless shadows across the gathered wolves of Stormclaw. At the center of the stone ring stood Malrik, alpha of the pack. Dark hair swept by the wind, golden eyes burning like embers under the storm. Tonight was meant to be a night of union, when the mate bond would be named and celebrated, when the alpha would claim the one fate had chosen for him. Raina stood across from him, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her medium brown hair whipped about her face, her brown eyes shining with hope she couldn't quite contain. She had felt the bond awaken the night before, bright, fierce, undeniable, and it had terrified her with its beauty. The elder lifted his staff, voice steady against the wind. By the law of the moon, the alpha claims his bride. The circle fell silent. Even the thunder hushed for a heartbeat. And Malrik broke it. No. The word cracked louder than the storm. Gasps rippled through the pack. Some turned to each other in disbelief. Others leaned forward, hungry for scandal. Raina's breath caught. What? Malrik's jaw tightened. His voice rang with authority, though his gaze never once touched hers. You are no mate of mine. The elder faltered. Alpha, I said no. Malrik's words cut like steel. He swept his gaze across the pack, daring anyone to challenge him. She is weak, unfit to stand beside me. This bond is nothing but rumor. Raina's chest hollowed. Malrik, she whispered, her voice breaking. You felt it. I know you did. But he would not look at her. On the edge of the circle, Beta Garrick smirked faintly, his lean frame loose, his eyes sharp as a blade catching light. Take her cloak, Malrik commanded, his voice cold enough to sear. Exile her before dawn. The pack shifted uneasily. Hands pulled the cloak from Raina's shoulders, the wind cutting against her bare skin. Her eyes searched Malrik's face, desperate for even the smallest crack. Regret, mercy, the echo of the bond he denied. But his golden eyes stayed hard as stone. Go, he said, his voice cold and final. And never return. The wind howled as she stumbled from the circle, stripped and humiliated. Only when she passed beyond the torches did the first heavy drops fall, spattering on the earth like a promise. By the time the forest swallowed her, the storm had broken fully open, rain pouring down as if the sky itself grieved what had been done. The storm chased her down the ridge like a living thing. Raina stumbled through mud and roots, her dress heavy, her hair plastered to her face. Every crack of thunder reminded her of Malrik's words, hammering over and over until her ears rang with them. You are no mate of mine. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs shook. She ran until the circle and its watching eyes were far behind. As the forest swallowed her, the storm deepened, the rain falling harder until every step became a battle through mud and water. She collapsed beneath a leaning pine and curled against its roots, shivering as the storm drowned out her sobs. The bond, which had blazed bright and wondrous only yesterday, now felt like a cruel chain tearing her chest apart. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Not Stormclaw, something harsher, broken. She bit her lip and held her breath until the echo died. By dawn, hunger gnawed at her belly. She dragged herself upright, following the trickle of a stream down into a ravine. She cupped water into her hands and drank until her stomach cramped. It steadied her enough to notice blood on her forearm, sliced from a fall she hadn't remembered. She tore a strip from her dress hem and bound it clumsily, hissing as the rough fabric pulled tight. Exile, she thought bitterly. The word was meant to kill her. Instead, it was forcing her to begin again. That was when the first bolt hissed past her cheek. She flung herself sideways, heart slamming against her ribs. Another bolt struck bark and splintered, showering her with shards. Hunters, She heard the crunch of boots on wet leaves, the snap of a bowstring being drawn again. Adrenaline shoved her to her feet. She ran. Branches tore at her arms, a bolt grazed her shoulder. She didn't stop. She couldn't. Voices cursed behind her, rough and unfamiliar. Not Stormclaw men, mercenaries paid to finish what Exile had begun. The trail dipped steeply. She slid down a moss-slick slope, crashing into a shallow gully. Pain flared up her side, but she forced herself to crawl into a crevice between stones. Mud smeared her face as she pressed herself against the rock, holding her breath. Footsteps stopped above. Two voices argued, one eager to chase her down, the other dismissive. She won't last a week in this wild. Let the forest finish her. Spittle hit the ground. Then silence. Raina stayed hidden until the storm dulled to drizzle and her shivering body could no longer endure stillness. She crawled out, trembling, clutching her torn arm. They meant to kill me. Malrik knew. The thought sliced sharper than her wound. He hadn't just rejected her, he had condemned her. Days blurred. Hunger became a constant ache. Nights she slept little, curled in hollows of rock or beneath fallen trees. More than once she thought of lying down and letting the bond pull her into nothingness. But each time, stubbornness dragged her up again. On the 5th day she reached a road. Her body ached, her lips were cracked. She had nothing left but breath. A creaking cart approached, pulled by a shaggy mule. The woman driving it was stout, gray-haired, her hands stained green with herbs. She pulled the cart to a stop and studied Raina without fear. "You look like you've been chewed up and spat out," the woman said matter-of-factly. Raina tried to speak. No words came. The woman clicked her tongue, hopped down, and offered a hand. "Come on then. I'm Mira. You'll ride with me a while." Mira smelled of rosemary and smoke. Her cart was crowded with jars of herbs, bundles of dried plants, and books worn soft with use. She cleaned Raina's arm with practiced care, her touch brisk but not unkind. "Hunters?" she asked, as she smeared a salve that stung but soothed. Raina nodded mutely. Mira grunted. "Figures. Exiles never clean enough for men like that." She bound the arm with neat layers of cloth. "Drink." The tea she pressed into Raina's hands was bitter, but warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since the circle, she felt safe. Seasons passed. Raina traveled with Mira's cart, working for her keep. She learned to grind herbs into poultices, to set bones, to read the skies for storms. She learned to wrap her fists before she fought, to strike with elbows and knees, to make herself smaller or larger as danger required. Markets and villages began to whisper about the brown-eyed girl who could fight off thieves and heal a fever with equal skill. Yet at night, when the cart creaked beneath stars, the bond still ached. Dreams came, Malrik's golden eyes reaching for her across a gulf she could never cross. She woke every time before his touch found her, breath ragged, heart raw. "Some threads don't cut clean," Mira told her once, watching her over the rim of a teacup. "But that doesn't mean they're meant to strangle you." Raina said nothing, but she tucked the words away, because exile had not broken her. It had remade her. The years did not pass kindly for Stormclaw. Whispers traveled faster than merchants. Iron Fang raiders on the western border, chained wolves driven like cattle. Stormclaw's defenses stretched thin. Villagers spoke of Garrick's silver tongue growing sharper, and of Malrik, still unwed, still restless, still haunted. Raina heard it all in the markets where she traded herbs, in the taverns where she stitched wounds, in the broken voices of refugees who fled the borders. Each word pulled at the old wound in her chest, until one night, as she lay awake in Mira's cart, the bond surged like fire through her ribs. It yanked her upright, breath ragged. "Go then," Mira said softly from her bedroll, as if she had been waiting. "The storm won't come to you. You'll have to walk into it." Raina looked down at her hands, calloused, scarred, stronger than they had ever been. "If I go, It will tear everything open again. Or close what was never meant to stay bleeding, Mira said. She rolled over and tugged her blanket higher. Either way, I expect my cart back. Stormclaw's hall rose against the ridge, torches burning bright against the twilight. The great doors were open, spilling firelight into the cold air. Raina walked through them with her head high, dressed not in rags, but in a simple gown of deep green, her hair braided like a warrior's, her brown eyes steady. The murmur that swept the hall was sharp enough to cut. Wolves turned, whispering her name as though it were a ghost's. At the center, Garrick froze mid-sentence. His smirk flickered, then returned sharper than before. "Well, well," he drawled. "Look what the storm dragged back. The little rumor." Raina met his gaze without blinking. "Careful, Garrick. Rumors bite." A ripple of laughter ran through the younger wolves. Garrick's smile thinned, and then Malrik stepped into the firelight. He looked older, shadows carved deeper into his face, his frame heavier with the weight of command. But his golden eyes, when they found her, flared bright and raw, as if the years between them had been nothing but a heartbeat. "Raina!" His voice broke the silence, low, hoarse. She inclined her head. "Alpha." The single word landed between them like a wall. For a long moment, neither moved. Wolves watched, breath caught, waiting for thunder to break. It came from the door instead. A boy no older than 14 stumbled in, mud streaked on his face, his chest heaving. "Iron Fang," he gasped. "At the West Watch, 20, maybe more, and they've got wolves on chains." The hall erupted in shouts. Garrick lifted a hand, calling for silence. "We'll send 10 to scatter them, nothing more, a skirmish at best." 10? Raina's voice cut through the noise. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the boy. "How many handlers? Did you see their collars?" The boy nodded, shuddering. "Spikes, red stones. They were wrong." The wolves looked half dead. Raina's stomach turned. She looked back to Malrik. "You'll need more than 10. Target the handlers first. Free the wolves if you can. And don't kill them unless you must. They're victims, not enemies." Garrick barked a laugh. Listen to her. An exile, giving orders. But Malrik didn't laugh. His golden eyes stayed locked on Raina. He had heard the authority in her tone, the certainty in her words. "I'll take 20, he said at last, his voice steady, "and I'll go myself." Gasps rippled through the hall again. Alphas didn't ride into skirmishes lightly. Garrick's eyes narrowed, his mouth twisting as if he had swallowed something sour. Raina raised her chin. "Good, because I won't carry you if you fall. You'll walk." And for the first time in years, Malrik almost smiled. "Threats already." "Promises," she said, turning away before he could answer. The West Watch Ridge was a scar of stone overlooking the dark forest. The air smelled wrong, like rust and sickness. They came out of the trees in 2s and 3s, wolves dragging chains, handlers in black leather driving them forward with hooks and whips. Red stones glowed faintly at the collars' centers, pulsing in rhythm with the wolves' ragged breathing. One wolf lunged, eyes wild, foam dripping from its jaws. Raina darted forward without fear. She caught the latch of the collar, twisted hard, and shouted, "Hush!" The wolf froze, choking. The latch snapped free. For a heartbeat, its eyes cleared. With a yelp, it bolted into the woods. Malrik was at her side, sword flashing as he cut down a handler who tried to seize her. His golden eyes burned bright as fire. "Stormclaw!" he roared, his voice rolling like thunder across the ridge. The pack surged forward. Chains clashed, shouts rang, steel met steel. And in the chaos, Raina and Malrik fought as if they had never been apart. Her strikes precise, his defense unyielding, their movements unspoken echoes of each other. The battle was not yet won, but something undeniable had already been reborn. The bond, fierce and alive, threading between them with every step. The ridge lay quiet after battle, broken chains and blood steaming in the cold night air. Stormclaw's warriors moved among the wounded, their voices hushed, their glances flicking often to where Malrik and Raina still stood. The bond burned between them, alive and raw. Malrik's golden eyes lingered on her, torn with things unsaid. At last he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Raina, walk with me. Please." She stiffened, every instinct screaming to refuse. But something in his tone, frayed, almost pleading, made her turn. Without a word, she followed him down the slope into the shadow of a ruined wall, away from listening ears. When they stopped, she folded her arms across her chest. "You've had years to explain. Start talking." For a long moment he said nothing, only studied the ground as if the truth were carved there. Then he lifted his gaze, stripped of alpha command, only a man carrying too much weight. "I felt the bond," he said hoarsely. "The night before the ceremony, it seared through me like fire. All I wanted was to stand before them and call you mine." His jaw clenched. "But if I had, it would have killed you." Raina's breath faltered. "Killed me?" Malrik nodded. "There is a curse on my line, a blood ward bound by my grandfather when famine nearly broke the pack. He swore to the cold moon that no alpha of Stormclaw would claim his mate before the rite of binding. The oath was sealed in blood, and blood is what it takes in return. Any alpha who defied it lost his mate." He swallowed hard, his voice low. "My father couldn't resist the bond. He claimed my mother early. For a few short months, they burned bright, inseparable. Then the ward struck. She sickened, drained by the bond itself, and by winter she was gone." His hands curled into fists. "I grew up watching him drown in the guilt of it, watching a pack resent him for killing the woman he loved. I swore I'd never put you through the same fate." Raina's heart thudded painfully. The curse was real. His fear was real. But so was her own wound. "That's reason enough to fear," she said, her voice shaking but steady. "But not reason enough to humiliate me in front of the pack. Not reason enough to strip me of everything and cast me out like filth. You could have trusted me, Malrik. You could have let me choose." His eyes tightened, but he pressed on. "It wasn't only the ward. Ironfang demanded a treaty. Their alpha offered his daughter, Vera, to bind our packs. Refuse, and war would have come before we were ready." Raina's lips curled in disgust. "So I was an obstacle, a bond to be severed for politics." His jaw worked. "And Garrick?" Her stomach clenched at the name. "Garrick came with proof," Malrik spat. "Charts, bloodlines, seals. He claimed the crescent mark on your wrist tied you to the Nightbane priestess line, that your blood carried ruin for any alpha foolish enough to take you." Raina lifted her wrist, the small pale crescent shimmering faintly in the torchlight. A mark she had carried since birth, never questioned, until now. "The Nightbane," Malrik said, bitterness sharpening his voice, "were whispered to be touched by the moon itself. Some of their daughters became shields for their mates, unbreakable, radiant. Others became blades, cutting their alphas down. Garrick twisted those stories into prophecy, and the elders listened." Her throat tightened as she lowered her wrist. "So you believed them. You believed Garrick's poison, the curse, the treaty, but not me. I believed the only way to keep you alive was to drive you away." His voice broke. "If I claimed you, the ward would have taken you. If I sheltered you, Ironfang would have used you. If I defied the council, Garrick would have had you killed in the dark. Exile was the only cruelty I thought you could survive." Memories of Hunter's bolts, hunger, endless nights clawed through her mind. She forced herself to meet his eyes. "You thought you were saving me, but all you did was break me and leave me to bleed." His shoulders sagged. "I see that now, and I will never forgive myself for it." The bond thrummed between them, heavy with pain and longing. Raina drew in a steady breath. If you want me at your side, you'll have to prove with more than words that I can stand there as your equal. Until then, I owe you nothing. Fail me once more, and I walk away forever. Slowly, Malrik bowed his head, not as alpha, but as a man stripped bare. Then I will prove it. The bond pulsed once, fierce and unrelenting, as if it too was listening. And for the first time since exile, Raina allowed a spark of hope to take root. Hope tempered with steel. The hall smelled of wet stone and blood, torches guttering against the dawn wind. Stormclaw's warriors filled the chamber, some tending wounds, others arguing in low voices that rose higher with every heartbeat. Garrick's voice cut through them all. This is madness. You risked 20 lives on the word of an exile, and half our best men came back torn. And for what? To free beasts that will likely bite us next moon? A murmur of agreement rippled through the weary wolves. Malrik's golden eyes flared. Those wolves were slaves, not enemies. Stormclaw does not butcher the broken. His gaze found Raina at the far end of the hall, steady, unwavering. The bond hummed between them, quiet but fierce. Garrick followed his line of sight, and his smirk deepened. Convenient, he said. Your tongue bends to hers now. How long before the pack breaks under her curse? Before Malrik could answer, the doors creaked open. A chill swept the room as Vera of Ironfang entered, pale cloak trailing water across the stone. 2 armored guards flanked her, their collars gleaming with faint red light. Stormclaw, she said, her voice smooth as glass. Last night you broke chains forged by Ironfang law. That is an act of war. The hall stilled. Garrick bowed his head slightly, too quick, too eager. Malrik did not move. What do you want, Vera? Her gray eyes flicked over him, then settled briefly, pointedly, on Raina. 3 nights from now, beneath the blood moon, you will bind with me. End your false claim, join our packs, and the borders will stand in peace. Refuse. She let silence sharpen her words. And Stormclaw will bleed until nothing is left. Then she turned and swept out, leaving frost in her wake. The hall erupted. Some cried for war, others for surrender. Garrick's voice rose above them. The path is clear. Take Vera, end this farce, and spare your people. Malrik slammed his hand against the stone table, the crack echoing like thunder. Enough. His eyes sought Raina, fierce and unshaken. There is another way. He beckoned her forward. Reluctantly, she stepped into the firelight, her chin high, though her heart pounded. Garrick is wrong, she said, her voice cutting the noise clean. The ward does not bind us still. Malrik did not claim me before the rite, and the time has long passed. The curse should have no hold over us. Murmurs surged through the hall. Garrick snarled, Lies! The Nightbane blood in you is proof enough. The bond will doom him as it doomed his father's mate. Raina raised her wrist, showing the faint crescent mark glimmering in the firelight. This is what he calls proof, a scar of birth twisted into prophecy. He would have you believe that I am blade instead of shield, doom instead of strength. Her gaze swept the hall. But fear is not truth. She turned to Malrik, her voice low but carrying. There is a ritual, the rite of binding, done beneath the blood moon. If the bond is false, if my blood truly carries ruin, then it will shatter in the circle before your eyes. But if it holds, if we stand together by choice, not by fear, then no curse, no lie, no counsel can deny us. The chamber fell silent. Wolves stared, torn between awe and dread. Garrick laughed harshly. And when it fails? When she crumples to ash before you? Raina did not flinch. Then I die free. But you will all see the truth laid bare. Malrik stepped to her side, his voice ringing clear. And if it holds, Garrick's poison dies here. Ironfang's threat dies with it. The pack will see with their own eyes where strength lies. He turned to face them all, every word heavy as stone. You asked for proof, Raina. You will have it. I will stand in that circle with you, and if the bond is real, I will never again deny it. The bond throbbed between them, fierce and alive. Raina forced herself to nod once, sharp as a blade. Then prepare, Malrik, because I will not bend. If this fails, I fall. If it holds, you kneel beside me as equal, or I walk away. The pack buzzed with unease, whispers colliding in the torchlight. Garrick's smirk faltered, his eyes glittering with something colder. Fear. Above the hall, dawn crept pale across the ridges. 3 nights until the blood moon. 3 nights until truth or ruin. The blood moon rose swollen and red, painting the ridge in eerie light. The binding circle loomed in the clearing, stones etched with runes that pulsed faintly as if they remembered every vow ever spoken within them. Stormclaw's pack gathered in silence, tension thick in the cold air. Malrik's voice carried across the crowd. This bond has been slandered. Tonight we end doubt. Call Mira. From the edge of the gathering, the gray-haired healer stepped forward, herb satchel slung across her shoulder, staff in hand. She had no rank, no title, but every eye followed her as she entered the circle. Raina's chest tightened with fierce gratitude. Mira, the woman who had kept her alive when exile should have killed her, was now here to see her fate sealed. Mira's voice rang steady. The rite of binding is older than Stormclaw itself. 2 stand as equals beneath the moon. If their bond is false, the circle burns them away. If it is true, no ward, no curse, no lie can sever it. Raina stepped into the circle first, her gown of deep green brushing against stone, her brown eyes steady, though her pulse raced. Malrik joined her, golden eyes fierce, his hand trembling only when it reached for hers. When their palms met, the circle shivered with light. Silver bled from the crescent mark on Raina's wrist. Gold fire flared from Malrik's eyes. The runes glowed brighter, stirred awake by their touch. Speak, Mira commanded. Malrik's vow came first, raw and rough. Raina, I swore once to protect you, and in fear I failed. Tonight I stand not as alpha above you, but as man beside you. No secrets, no lies. If the bond takes me, it takes me freely. The light surged, trembling with truth. Raina lifted her chin, her voice clear as steel. I was cast out, broken, left to bleed, but exile remade me. I return by choice, not fate. I stand as your equal. If this bond holds, it is because I choose it. The runes flared brighter, silver and gold weaving together. Murmurs rippled through the pack, awe and fear mingling. Then Garrick's voice split the air. This is lies, he roared, shoving forward, eyes fever bright. She is Nightbane, a blade meant to cut Stormclaw's line. The crowd stirred uneasily. Raina's gaze seared him. You forged those lies, Garrick. You twisted prophecy to poison the elders. He laughed, sharp and ugly. And why not? I will not live in Malrik's shadow forever. Ironfang promised me the Alpha's seat. I sold them your bond and your pack. Gasps erupted. Wolves recoiled. A horn blared. From the tree line, Ironfang soldiers stormed in, wolves in crimson collars snarling against chains. Garrick's grin spread wide. Behold your saviors! Chaos erupted. The circle flickered, the ritual faltering as fear tore through the pack. Malrik gripped Raina's hand tighter. Stay with me, he rasped. The bond throbbed, silver and gold straining against each other, threatening to snap. Raina's crescent mark blazed with fire. This is the moment, Raina, Malrik said, golden eyes locked to hers. Not fate, choice, do you claim me? Her chest burned with every scar of exile, every night of hunger, every betrayal, and still the bond endured. I do, she whispered, then louder, fierce as the storm, I choose you. The circle exploded with light. Silver and gold spiraled skyward, chains snapping, collars cracking like glass. The enslaved wolves bolted free, howls shaking the night. Stormclaw rallied. Ironfang faltered. Raina strode straight toward Garrick, the bond blazing through her chest. You tried to end me, but exile did not break me, Garrick. It remade me. He lunged, blade flashing. She caught his wrist, twisted, and drove him to his knees. The pack closed in, snarling, their judgment already decided. You betrayed your alpha. You betrayed your people. By Stormclaw law, there is only one end. She slammed the blade into the earth beside his throat. Death! Guards dragged him back, his curses drowned beneath the pack's roar. When silence fell, Raina turned back. Malrik still stood in the circle, golden eyes on her, unflinching. The bond thrummed, silver and gold, alive and undeniable. Above them, the blood moon burned, and Stormclaw stood free. The blood moon hung high, its crimson glow softening as the night deepened. The battlefield lay strewn with broken chains and scattered weapons, Ironfang's forces driven back into the trees. The freed wolves howled in the distance, no longer slaves, but spirits unleashed to the wild. Stormclaw gathered in the clearing, their voices hushed, every gaze fixed on the circle where Raina and Malrik still stood. The runes glowed faintly, silver and gold threads twining across the stones, proof that the right had held. Mira stepped forward, her staff steady, her voice carrying. The bond is sealed, equal to equal, chosen by choice, not by fear. The ward holds no more claim. A murmur rippled through the pack. Some bowed their heads in reverence, others raised their fists in triumph. For the first time in years, Stormclaw stood not divided, but united. Malrik turned to face them, his golden eyes blazing. You have seen the truth. Garrick poisoned you with lies, but tonight the moon herself judged us. Raina is no curse. She is my equal, my mate. He dropped to one knee before her, his voice rough, but steady enough to carry. Before Stormclaw, before the moon, I vow to never again let fear guide my hand. Raina, I ask not for forgiveness, but for a chance to walk beside you, openly, wholly, forever. The pack gasped. An alpha on his knees was no small thing. Some warriors shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke against it. Raina looked down at him, her chest tight, her throat thick with unspoken fire. This was the man who had shattered her, who had driven her into exile. And yet, this was also the man who had bared his fear, fought beside her, and risked everything to prove his bond was real. She let the silence stretch, every wolf watching, every heartbeat a drum in the night. Finally, she spoke. You cast me out once, Malrik. You left me to bleed so the ward would not take me. I survived because I learned to stand alone. Her voice caught, then steadied, sharper than steel. So hear me now. I do not kneel to you. I stand beside you, equal or not at all. Malrik's head bowed lower. Equal, always. The bond thrummed between them, pulsing with the weight of his vow. Slowly, Raina extended her hand. He rose, not as Alpha towering above, but as man beside her, their palms meeting once more. The circle glowed softly, silver and gold threads winding together until the air hummed with power. The pack roared, the sound rolling like thunder across the ridge. Raina lifted her chin, letting the moment settle. Stormclaw has been led by fear too long. Tonight that ends. We fight not with lies, not with chains, but with truth. We are stronger together, alpha, mate, and pack. The wolves answered with howls that shook the night. For the first time since her exile, Raina felt not the weight of eyes judging her, but the warmth of voices claiming her as their own. Malrik leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. You saved us all. She met his gaze, brown eyes burning with fierce light. No, we saved each other. His lips brushed hers then, not the desperate hunger of a bond barely held, but the steady fire of two who had chosen each other, fully, freely. The pack erupted in cheers, the sound swelling until it seemed even the moon itself might hear. Above them, the blood moon began to wane, its crimson light fading into pale silver. The night was still, but Stormclaw was alive, renewed, remade. And at the circle's heart, hand in hand, stood the Alpha and his mate. Not as master and shadow, not as savior and saved, but as equals. If you like this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thanks for watching.